Welcome in, everyone. We're diving deep today into some pretty fascinating stuff, actually. You sent this in, all about the Overlook Hotel and the Torrance family. And we're going right to the source. We've got excerpts from Stephen King's The Shining.
Yeah, you've really given us the setup here to get right into it. Really figure out like the core of this whole story, how it's all starting out, what the atmosphere is like, and maybe even some of the early signs of trouble. For the Torrances, I mean, think of it this way. We're giving you like a fast track to understanding all the basics of this iconic story and the dread that just hangs over everything.
Okay, so we first hear about the Overlook from Ullman, the hotel manager.
Right.
He's the one who describes the caretaker position,
Hmm?
to Jack Torrance. And right away, the sheer size of this place just hits you. 110 rooms.
Wow.
And then, on the third floor, there's another 30 apartments.
Smaller.
10 in each wing.
Mhm.
Of course, they'd have the presidential suite.
Yeah.
And only make sure to point out, every single room has like a spectacular view.
So you're saying right from the start, we get this sense of grandeur, this like imposing, almost overwhelming setting.
Exactly. And you can almost picture Jack there, desperate for this job, trying to take it all in.
But I get the feeling that underneath it all, there's this tension. Like Jack's impatient with Ullman's whole sales pitch, but he needs this. He needs this job badly.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That neediness is a key element here because it kind of sets up this power imbalance between them from the very beginning. And think about this. We see Jack trying to project this image of stability that he might not even have. I mean, it really speaks volumes before we even get to the actual conflict.
Yeah, it's all there, right beneath the surface. And the way they describe their first meeting, it just adds to that. Ullman is, neat, small. He's got his little personnel pin.
Right. All official.
And then there's Jack, who's described as thinner. His hair's thinning. He's got on like a banker's suit, somber gray tie, even a flower in his lapel, trying to make a good impression.
It's like this visual contrast
Yeah.
that says so much about who they are
Yeah,
and what they represent.
absolutely. And that flower, I don't know, there's something almost sad about it. It's like this tiny attempt at optimism, or maybe even just trying too hard to appear normal in a situation where
Whoa.
he needs to impress.
Right. Like it's all an act. And
Yeah.
then Ullman drops this kind of chilling topic, cabin fever.
Oh, yeah. Like, that's not ominous at all.
But it's not just about being stuck inside. He describes it as this claustrophobic reaction
Yeah.
to being cooped up
Mhm.
for so long with the same people. It can make you start to really dislike them.
Like, intense dislike.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Ullman says, in extreme cases, it can even lead to hallucinations, violence.
Oh, wow.
And he says, the smallest things can set people off, like burnt food, disagreements about chores.
Yeah.
And it can even escalate to murder.
Okay, so we're definitely in foreshadowing territory now.
Big time. It's like
Yeah.
from the start, we're being warned
Yeah.
that things can go very wrong in this isolated environment.
Yeah, and it's not just boredom we're talking about. A serious psychological pressure cooker here, where any tension that's already there just gets amplified by being trapped together in this huge, empty hotel. And you know what I find interesting? Ullman's tone when he's talking about this, it's almost uncomfortable. Like he knows.
Knows what?
Like he knows things about the Overlook. It's history that things have gone wrong before, but he's just presenting it in this detached way, like a doctor giving a diagnosis. And you know what else? Jack's reaction, he's kind of pleased that Ullman's squirming, like he gets some satisfaction from it.
Which tells us what?
It tells us that Jack, maybe he's got this underlying resentment, like he thinks he's above all this, that he's immune to this cabin fever thing.
So he's already underestimating the situation.
Exactly. And then there's this part where Ullman says, I hope you don't bear me a grudge, and he insists. It's nothing personal, but Jack's thinking the exact opposite. He's got grudges, and they're big ones.
So their dynamic is already pretty messed up.
Oh, yeah. Ullman wants the best for the Overlook. He wants to protect its reputation. And Jack's just simmering with resentment. It's like this unspoken conflict that's already brewing.
Okay, so let's shift gears for a second. We cut to Danny, Jack's son. He's waiting for his dad in their beat-up Volkswagen. And he's just sitting there, not playing or anything, just totally focused on that car arriving. It's a classic image of a kid's anticipation, like they can't wait to see their dad.
Yeah, and there's this sense of maybe dependence, too. Like, Danny really relies on Jack.
Right. And then we get this little exchange between Wendy and Danny in the car. Danny mentioned something his dad said about the gas pump being gone to hell, and Wendy corrects him. Says that kind of language isn't nice.
It's like she's trying to protect him
Yeah.
from that rough side of Jack.
Yeah. And it gives us this glimpse
Yeah.
into their family dynamic. Wendy's the one who sets the rules.
Yeah.
She's the one trying to maintain some sense of normalcy.
And it also hints at a certain level of anxiety in Wendy. Like, she's trying to hold things together in this, precarious situation they're in.
Okay, so then we meet Watson, the maintenance guy.
Yeah.
This stocky guy with corn silk hair. He's showing Jack around. And their first stop is the boiler room. Watson points to the flame. In the furnace, it's just this normal-looking blue flame.
Right.
But then he's quick to say how much power, how much destructive power is contained in that flame.
Okay. More foreshadowing. This time it's tied to like a specific object, this menacing boiler.
Right, and then things take a turn for the seriously creepy.
What happened?
Watson casually mentions the previous winter caretaker, Grady.
Okay.
And he just drops his bomb. Grady axes his whole family and then kill himself. He just tosses it out there like it's no big deal.
That's chilling, just the way he says it. It's so nonchalant about this horrific event.
And he dismisses Grady as a bad actor and a slob.
Like that makes it all okay.
It's so disturbing the way he downplays
Yeah.
this horrible tragedy. Like it's just part of the Overlook's history.
It's like he's desensitized to the violence.
And the details he gives are just gruesome. The bodies were found on the 3rd floor, West Wing, frozen solid. He even throws in this weird comment about Ullman supposedly running some illegal operation in Florida during the off-season, and how Ullman was desperate to keep the whole Grady thing out of the newspapers.
So now we've got this whole other layer of mystery and potential scandal. Like the Overlook has these dark secrets that Ullman's trying to hide.
Exactly. And in the middle of all this, we get this glimpse into Danny's thoughts. He's worried about his father. He keeps thinking about Jack, not doing the bad thing.
A bad thing.
We find out later it's about Jack's drinking, his past problems with alcohol. And at the same time, Danny's also excited about seeing a wasp nest. Typical kid stuff. But given everything else that's going on, it takes on this whole other meaning.
Like this innocent little detail suddenly feels ominous.
Right. And then we learn about Danny's special ability, his shining, and we meet Tony.
Oh, yeah. Danny's invisible friend.
All right, so we find out Danny can concentrate so hard that he can make things disappear in his mind. But he can also see things that aren't really there. And there's this flashback to an incident when his parents were fighting about getting a divorce, and Danny got so upset he ended up on the floor, covered in food, that he'd somehow made disappear from the table.
So his powers are connected to, like, strong emotions, stress.
And it's our first introduction to what they call Danny's shining. It's like this psychic ability, a heightened sense of perception.
And then there's Tony, who Danny describes as his invisible playmate. But he's got these mixed feelings about Tony. Sometimes he's comforting. Other times, he's scary.
Like a wasp's nest, waiting to be disturbed. Those are his exact words.
That image is so powerful. It's like, Tony's not just imaginary. There's something more to him, something dangerous.
And then Danny has this really disturbing vision, the red drum vision.
Okay. That's one of the most iconic parts of the whole book.
It's so vivid, so terrifying. It's all about fear and this overwhelming sense of darkness and violence. And there's this figure with a roque mallet. And Danny sees this word, red drum.
Written backwards.
Right. And it becomes this symbol, this early warning sign of the horror that's coming.
It's a brilliant way to set the tone, to really instill that sense of dread in the reader.
Okay, so the Torrances finally arrive at the Overlook. And they're doing normal stuff, like unpacking groceries. But the whole time, Danny's got this fear, this word, red drum, echoing in his head.
It's like this juxtaposition between the ordinary and the terrifying.
And we get inside Jack's head, too. He's worried about their car, the Volkswagen. It's not reliable, and they're in a really tough spot financially. And Wendy, she's adamant about getting a phone line installed, even though they can barely afford it.
It shows how much she values that connection to the outside world.
Like she knows how isolated they'll be. And then there's this quick phone call between Jack and Wendy. He's telling her they need to talk about something important, but he puts it off for a week. And Wendy's response, it's like she's tired of his broken promises.
So there are some serious issues in their marriage.
Definitely. And then there's this weird moment where Jack's having trouble tying his shoes. And then right after that, he makes this grandiose statement about being able to fly to the moon.
It's like a disconnect from reality.
And Wendy compares him to her own father, who was also unreliable, volatile.
So she's seeing a pattern here.
Right. And as they're exploring the Overlook, Wendy's really anxious. about the drive is tough, mountain roads. But Danny's actually optimistic.
They're dealing with this in very different ways.
And Jack, he makes this offhand comment about the gas gauge, saying it'll hold out for 5 more miles. Like it's no big deal.
He's downplaying the danger.
And then Wendy, she looks at the mountains, and she has this terrible feeling. She even mentions the Donner Party.
Oh, wow. That's heavy.
It's like this premonition of things going wrong. And then we get this flashback to an incident in the lobby with the demanding guest, and Ullman's handling it. Politely, but firmly.
So it shows us what kind of place the Overlook is.
Right.
And what Ullman's like.
Right. And there's this moment with the animal-shaped edges.
Kind of cute.
But then it's immediately followed by this thought about the boiler exploding.
So we're right back to that sense of dread.
And then we have Halloran, the chef. He starts asking Danny about his abilities, specifically about his dreams. And Tony.
He knows. There's something special about Danny.
Yeah, and Danny's frustrated because he doesn't understand it all himself. He says Tony shows him these writings that he can't read.
It's like Tony's the key to understanding Danny's powers.
And Danny explains when he's concentrating really hard. And that since they got to the Overlook, his dreams have changed. They've become nightmares.
So the hotel is definitely having an effect on him.
But he won't tell his parents because he's afraid Jack will lose his job and go back to the bad thing.
He's carrying a lot for a little kid.
And then Halloran admits he's had bad dreams at the Overlook too. He mentions the hedges and a former waitress, Dolores Vickery.
So Danny's not imagining things.
Right. And as the staff is leaving, Watson gives Wendy this creepy wink, like he's got something on his mind.
Yeah, it's just uncomfortable.
And Ullman tells Jack the exact closing date, May 12th. And one of the other employees, Braddock, he's practically giddy about leaving.
Like he can't wait to get out of there.
And then, once everyone's gone, this silence falls over the hotel.
It's like all you can hear is the emptiness.
And Danny sees this old fire extinguisher. And to him, it looks like a sleeping snake.
Again with the snake imagery.
And he's relieved when it disappears from his sight.
It's like even the ordinary objects are unsettling to him.
Ullman's really worried about securing the windows, especially the expensive one in the presidential suite.
Like the hotel itself is fragile, vulnerable.
And they pass by room 217, the room Halloran warned Danny about.
Ominous.
Danny's both fascinated and scared. Yeah, that's a bad combination.
Inside the suite, Danny finds this little pantry with a dumbwaiter. That goes down to the kitchen. He's excited about it, like it's an adventure. It's a nice little moment of childhood innocence.
And then Watson comes back to remind Jack
Yeah.
about the boiler and how important it is to keep the pressure under control.
He really emphasizes that, doesn't he?
Like it's a ticking time bomb.
Yeah.
And Jack actually feels sorry for Ullman having to leave the Overlook to go work some crummy job during the off-season. And Ullman, he tells Jack to take care of the place.
Like it's his baby.
And then Danny asks this haunting question. But he doesn't say it out loud. He just thinks it. But will we be here?
And Jack.
He dismisses it. Tells Dan not to worry.
He has no idea.
And that's where we leave off, with Wendy noticing Danny's runny nose. And she says it looks like a fire extinguisher.
Okay, that's a strange comparison.
And then they go inside, closing themselves off
Yeah.
from the wind. That's described as this: unsettling whine.
It's like the hotel is closing in on them.
So, to recap, we've seen the Torrance family arrive at this isolated hotel. We've heard all these warnings and unsettling stories, especially about Grady. And we're starting to see Danny's powers and his disturbing visions.
And we can't forget those little details, the cabin fever, Halloran's own experiences, and the constant sense of unease that just hangs over everything.
And for you, our listener, we hope this deep dive has given you a good grasp of the story's beginnings, all those aha moments and those vivid details that make this story so compelling.
And as we move forward, we have to ask ourselves, what's going to happen as the isolation takes hold, as winter sets in? What forces are at play here at the Overlook? And what dangers are really facing the Torrances?
Chilling questions indeed. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.